suffering succotash, son.
Austin 316 says I just whipped your ass.
Riley, Randy, Jimmy. This is my yard now. Suplex City, bitch.
Hello and welcome to another edition of Willpower Wrestling here on YouTube. And today I'm going to be getting into the Superstar Shakeup, which is going to be happening tonight and also tomorrow on SmackDown. So last year, the Superstar Shakeup really did some damage to SmackDown. SmackDown lost a couple of its top performers, Bray Wyatt, Dean Ambrose, The Miz, and they weren't left with much despite getting Charlotte and a couple other superstars over in that direction. SmackDown was really hurt. So I think this year is an opportunity to get SmackDown back on the right track. They haven't been bad lately. We have Shinsuke Nakamura and AJ Styles and now Daniel Bryan on the upper card in the main event area. And I think it should stay like that. But SmackDown should add some new pieces, and Raw should as well, since this is really the time of year where the Superstar Shakeup, it can help both Raw and SmackDown at the same time. It doesn't have to hurt one brand at the other, or hurt one brand and help the other brand at one brand's expense. So I'd like to start with which superstars I would move from Raw to SmackDown. And coming off the heels of his return this week to Monday Night Raw, I think Jeff Hardy would be the perfect candidate to move over to Raw. I think he can do his own thing. Right now, he doesn't need to be with Matt. Well, Matt does the broken Matt Hardy thing. And I think Jeff Hardy can become a solid upper card to even main event act. And seeing him feud with the likes of Shinsuke Nakamura, AJ Styles, even Daniel Bryan, those would all be fun feuds. And just a disclosure here, I think that Shinsuke Nakamura, Daniel Bryan, and AJ Styles, they should all stay on SmackDown. You shouldn't mess with that. I really like that main event scene, and I don't think there would be much room for them on Raw unless Braun Strowman moved to SmackDown or someone like Roman Reigns moved to SmackDown, which I don't want to see happen. So Jeff Hardy over to SmackDown, I think would be a solid move. And Asuka, she's in kind of interesting situation right now coming after her WrestleMania loss to Charlotte. Asuka was originally on Raw, and I suppose she still is, despite fighting for the SmackDown Women's Championship at WrestleMania. But I would move Asuka to SmackDown, and I would swap Charlotte with her. So Charlotte, she lost the title. She goes over to Raw to plant the seeds for something with Ronda Rousey for next year's WrestleMania. And Asuka, she gets a change of scenery and moves over to SmackDown to become the top dog over there. And this next one should seem kind of obvious, but The Miz should move to SmackDown. SmackDown is a better place for him. There's more room for The Miz at the top of the card on SmackDown than there ever will be on Raw. And Daniel Bryan is on SmackDown, and The Miz needs to feud with Daniel Bryan. There's absolutely no reason why this match shouldn't happen. When Daniel Bryan wasn't cleared in the ring, we were all wondering, hey, when is this match going to happen? What's the payoff if Daniel Bryan can't wrestle? But now that Daniel Bryan can wrestle, this feud that's been ongoing for years now, really, it should have some culmination, and I believe that should happen sometime this year after The Miz makes the move over to SmackDown. Another superstar that should move over to SmackDown from Raw is Seth Rollins. I think Seth Rollins, similar to other superstars on this list, he's really feuded with just about everyone he can on Raw, and I think a change of scenery would really benefit him. And I'm thinking he takes the IC title, the Intercontinental title, back to SmackDown, which would mean you can't have two mid-card champions on the same show. Now, can you? So Jinder Mahal, he's a United States champion. I'm saying Jinder Mahal, he switches over and swaps with Seth Rollins. So Seth Rollins takes the Intercontinental Championship over to SmackDown. He can feud with the likes of Bobby Roode, Baron Corbin, other superstars like that. And Jinder Mahal gets a change of scenery and moves over to SmackDown since he's feuded with a lot of the SmackDown roster already. Also, Sasha Banks, she's been on the Raw roster for a while now. She currently is entrenched in a feud with Bayley that's been going on for months. But I think after Sasha Banks and Bayley, maybe they have a match at Backlash. I'm assuming, by the way, similar to a couple years ago when they first did the draft, that despite whoever gets moved around tonight on Raw and tomorrow on SmackDown, whatever matches they have going on at Backlash, they will still have, even if they are on separate brands for the time being. And after that, the moves will become more official. So I think Sasha Banks, she moves comes over to SmackDown shortly, or well, tonight, and her feud with Bayley will conclude very, very soon. And this one's a little bit of a wild card since he is injured right now, but Dean Ambrose, I think, should move over to SmackDown. You can't have all three members of the Shield on Raw forever, and now that Seth Rollins, I predict, will be moving over to SmackDown, I think Dean Ambrose, why not have him on there too? We've seen Seth Rollins and Dean Ambrose feud before if WWE does go in that direction, but we haven't seen Dean Ambrose as a heel before, and I think a heel Dean Ambrose against the likes of AJ Styles, Daniel Bryan, Shinsuke Nakamura, Seth Rollins, whoever he may tear it up with on there could be a lot of fun. And I think he may get more opportunities on SmackDown than he would on Raw. But this is a wild card pick. It's unlikely to happen. And it's also a pick where I think whether Dean Ambrose goes on Raw or SmackDown when he comes back, as long as he comes back as a revitalized heel character, he should be fine wherever he goes. Also, there's the interesting situation with Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens. They just fought for a spot on Raw this past week, and by the way, TNA is hiring, in case you didn't know, Kurt Angle let you know. And they fought for a spot. It was a no contest. Neither of them got it. And I'm predicting that Kevin Owens will find his way to Raw, and Sami Zayn somehow, I'm not sure how this will make sense in storyline since Shane McMahon hates him and Daniel Bryan doesn't like him. Maybe Paige, since she is the new SmackDown general manager, will find a way to bring Sami Zayn back into the fold on SmackDown. But I believe that it's time to separate Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn. I was really surprised last year when they were both drafted to SmackDown, and since their careers have been their WWE careers, even their time on the independent scene, they've been so linked together so closely. It's time to separate them for a little bit, and this is the time to do that. So Kevin Owens heading over to Raw, and Sami Zayn heading over to SmackDown, and they'll find a way to work that into a storyline. Now, I've already mentioned a couple superstars from SmackDown that would go to Raw: Charlotte, Jinder Mahal, even Kevin Owens. There's a couple others that I'd like to mention that I think could really benefit from being moved over to Raw. And number one would be Randy Orton. Randy Orton, he's almost like a part-time player at this point. I feel like he's been treading water a little bit, especially since we're getting Orton versus Jinder again at Backlash. And I know if they're both moving to Raw, there's a possibility that they will cross paths again. But to avoid that, I think Randy Orton should go to Raw and become a heel. He should become that top heel, that vicious character that we all love Randy Orton as. And I think him as a person, you hear him in interviews, he's always talking about how much fun it is to be a heel. I think that's what he wants as well. So if Randy and Jinder are both heels, no more Randy Jinder feud, everyone wins. And Randy Orton can really find his niche on Raw once again. So Randy Orton moving over to Raw. Becky Lynch is also somebody who she's been with SmackDown since the brand split started once again in 2016. And Becky Lynch is someone that could really benefit from a change of scenery, just face some new opponents, get some new life around her. And she's criminally underutilized on SmackDown. On Raw, it's a gamble that she'll get any more spotlight, especially if Charlotte is going over on Raw too. But I think any kind of change of scenery could really benefit Becky Lynch, and it could help her a lot just to change who she's wrestling and who she's around. Another female performer who I think should move over from SmackDown to Raw is Natalya. Now, this one, if it doesn't happen, I don't think it hurts Natalya a whole hell of a lot, but she's another person who's feuded with just about everybody on SmackDown, and moving to Raw could breathe some new life into her character as well. And I know I haven't mentioned any tag teams that would move from brand to brand. I think Raw really needs help on the tag team side. Authors of Pain just debuted last week, which is definitely going to give that division a shot in the arm. But I think to further give that Raw tag team division a shot in the arm, the Usos should move over to Raw. We've seen the Usos feud with everyone on SmackDown from their many matches with the New Day, which are great, but it's starting to grow a little tiresome to their recent matches with the Bludgeon Brothers and Breezango. The Usos have done it all on SmackDown, and I think it's time for them to move over to Raw and get a change of scenery there, and maybe SmackDown eventually could call up a tag team like Sanity from NXT to fill up that void that the Usos will leave. But other than that, I don't think Raw should trade any tag teams over to SmackDown. SmackDown has has had the much stronger tag team division for the better part of a year now. So there's no need to hurt Raw's tag team division when they're really just starting to rebuild itself right now. The Authors of Pain coming in and some new match possibilities are starting to come to the forefront. Now, there's a couple of picks from NXT. I did mention NXT call-ups there a second ago. There's a few that I think could happen, and I'm torn whether or not these superstars that I think may be called up would benefit more on Raw or SmackDown. So I won't predict exactly where they'll go, but I'll throw their names out there to possibly be called up. The first one would be Drew McIntyre. Now, Drew McIntyre, he's due any moment now to come back from his injury that he suffered, I believe, last November in a match against Andrade Cien Almas. He's done everything he can in NXT. He was NXT champion, and he's not getting any younger. So get this guy up on the main roster. I think if he's on Raw or SmackDown, he'll be equally fine, and he should debut as a face, a baby face that he's been in NXT. Another person who's due to be called up is Andrade Cien Almas himself. He just lost the NXT Championship to Aleister Black. I'm sure he'll get one more match against Aleister Black, but there's no reason why he can't be called up to NXT now, or excuse me, to Raw now, or SmackDown, to the main roster, and start doing his own thing. He has to go with Selena Vega, though. Selena has helped his act so much. They're like Paul Heyman and Brock Lesnar. They're peanut butter and jelly. They go together perfectly, and there's no reason to separate them. So Andrade Cien Almas is another NXT superstar that may be called up and is someone to keep your eye out for. Even Johnny Gargano is another person who he's done a lot, basically everything you can do in NXT besides winning the NXT Championship, but with Aleister Black holding that right now, I don't see him dropping it anytime soon. I can easily see Johnny Gargano being called up to SmackDown or Raw. SmackDown would probably be the better place for him, actually, and making his mark there. So there you have it. Those are my Superstar Shakeup predictions, which will take place tonight and tomorrow on SmackDown. But let me know what you think. Let me know what your superstar predictions are to change brands. And also, if you like this, if you like hearing Willpower Wrestling, you can hear more of it on Willpower Radio on KKSM AM 1320 if you do live in the San Diego area. And if you don't, I've got good news for you, because you can also tune in on PalomarCollegeRadio.com by hitting the Listen Live tab. I'm on every Monday from 2 to 4 p.m. and you can get more of this there. So that does it for me, and I will catch you guys next time here on another edition of Willpower Wrestling.